First of all, English is not my first language, so excuse my French. Now, with that being said, I want to explain a couple of things so that you don't get lost along the way. In 1994, Nelson Mandela won or became the first president of South Africa. And I say the first president, not just the first black, simply because before 1994, South Africa was something else. In 1994, it became a demonstration of crazy, basically. Just kidding, man. So in my head, democracy is demonstration of crazy. Yeah, ready?
Yeah.
So in 1994, Nelson Mandela became the first president of South Africa. I say the first president because he was black, and that by default made him the first black president of South Africa. The country was brand new. Before that, it was something else. And I'm going to explain why I have to say this, because to get to a point where Nelson Mandela saved the country and became the first president of the country, you need to understand that it was white people who had it, who were in charge of it. And taking it from them didn't really mean taking land from them. It simply meant taking the key to the house, gaining our freedom from the oppression, from a lot of violation of human rights. So we did get that. The reason why I have to pinpoint or start with Nelson Mandela and going backwards is because, well, people think South Africa got what it wanted in 1994. It didn't. It only got freedom to vote. Not even our freedom of speech, because we don't even have freedom of speech here. In Motaba, what was that? Nonetheless, we gained our freedom and a couple of small other freedoms. Now, at number one is the Land Act of 1913 that was created simply to systematically take land from black people. Plain and simple as that. Now, this was in 1913. In 1912, there was a creation of the African National Congress. It's called the ANC today. But the gentleman who created this, specifically John Dube, he had a magazine that he was running, and this led to being the opposition to all this nonsense that white people was doing. So by 1912, white people saw black people creating political parties and magazines and start communicating with the world to ask for help. In 1913, they passed an act that gives them permission to take land from black people. In 1914, John Dube, Solplaatje, and a couple of other members of the African National Congress, they decided, let's go to England and try to delegate and get rid of this law because it's taking land from our people. The unfortunate part is they died before this was even overturned. This law was never overturned for many years, so it allowed white people to take land from black people for many years before even South Africa got its independence or freedom. It got its independence or freedom, not the land back. That was taken and it was never given back. So by 1913, white people passed a law in this country that gives them the permission to just get land and kick everybody around, put them in dry, dusty and rocky land. They took fertile land for them to plant, Kolong or Orange River. In my culture, it's called Kolong because we've known that river for many years. It provided to us just the same as the Nile provided to the Egyptians. So for a long time, we were living alongside the riverbanks. But if you look there, you will find mostly agriculture, white people planting things there, grapes. And it's not just that. Cecil Rhodes mined diamonds there, a lot of them. The mouth of the Orange River into the Atlantic Ocean, there was a lot of diamonds that were taken from there. Taken because they took them. So Andries Pretorius, and a couple of other guys that he was with 2 cannons as far as records show, and a couple of other guns, or those ones that you fit in the front, put the bullet there. Those ones, they had a couple of those. And in the dawn of 16 December 1838, they invaded Dingane's territory and they won, or they were victorious, over 10,000 and 15,000 Zulu warriors. So a couple of guys, white dudes with guns and cannons, were victorious over 10,000 to 15,000 Zulu warriors simply because they had spears. That's the Battle of Blood River. I have a video of it later on. But the Battle of Blood River doesn't necessarily mean they took land from us. What it simply means is they started creating problems from there because they got in, and that problem that they caused scattered people everywhere else. Because even though, like for an example, there were incidents like the Mfekane, or however way you want to pronounce it, that is misunderstood. And it's white people who tend to take from that there was an empty land before that Mfekane happened. And when it happened, then that's when black people started occupying the land. There was nobody there. And it's wrong because that's not the case. Nonetheless, Pretorius and a couple of other guys that he had with guns and 2 cannons were victorious over Dingane. and thousands of Zulu warriors. And they vowed that on the 16th of December, that day would be the day of Sabbath for them. Today, that day is called the Day of Reconciliation. Reconciliation meant food. At number 3, to prove that black people were occupying this land way before white man came here, in 1430, there was an establishment of a kingdom or an empire called Motaba, or the Empire of Motaba. And this kingdom is really amazing, and I have an entire video of it. It's an amazing kingdom. There's so much more that you would love about this kingdom. And the Portuguese, in fact, at some point gave it this. This was the coat of arms or the flag that the Portuguese, I guess, Portuguese decided they don't have graphic designers. Let's design something for them. So that's what they did for them. Nonetheless, this was a long time ago, before even the Great Trek itself, because the Great Trek happened after 1795 when the British took over, because the British created a problem for the Dutch. So by 1835, when the Great Trek began, by that time, there were people already. In fact, Motapas, it was already gone at that time. They were everywhere. There were many other kingdoms that were scattered everywhere. That one specifically, Motapa's kingdom, it was gone already by the time white people came here. There were descendants of that empire that came from them, just same as the Roman Empire. And at number 4, by 1240, there's verifiable evidence that show that Barolo were occupying a vast majority of what is today known as Northwest and Botswana. I have about 10 episodes on different tribes, and Botswana is one of them, and even Zulus and many others as well that I'm going to explain or share with you later on. But the most important thing is Motapa's empire covered what is now known as Zambia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. That's a huge amount of land. Most of these kingdoms that we had later from this one just made a bunch of other small kingdoms that were scattered over Southern Africa. And most of these kingdoms perished. Some conflicts amongst themselves, but the majority of them when white man was introduced. At number 5 is General Lieutenant Scott. In 1857, 29th of April, he issued out a proclamation of about 300 to 3,000 acres of land given away to white people. I mean, he just literally cut a piece of land and he started giving it to white people for them to lease and to use for agriculture and other purposes. Now, this land, there were people there, black people there. He had to deal with them like this. Some of these black people needed employment, needed land, needed food, because they were kicked out and they were sent or thrown into rocky, dry, and dusty land in a place where they could not even make food. Now, they ended up using some of these guys as employers because they needed money, they needed resources, so they started living amongst or going to white people. And of course, this is the South Africa we know today. Ancestors who worked for white people for long, we still do it now. But nonetheless, white people came, some cut pieces of land, some didn't do that, they just rented land that was cut by other white people. And from then, they started hiring more black people to work for them. It's like basically going in somebody's house and then asking them to cook for you, wash your clothes, take care of you. And it's their house, it's even their food, everything is theirs. But you just go there and you start telling them to do something. Basically, white people did that. And it's very difficult because in 1994, we got the key to the house, not the house itself. Now, I'm sure you understand basically by now, it's obvious, really clear that there were black people living in this part of this continent. Southern Africa, especially South Africa. There were black people living here for many years. I have a lot of videos that I'm going to share with you later. They are specifically on multiple tribes, on kings and queens. I have episodes, separate episodes for all these minor details about this country and how it got here. So the conclusion is, this country today is simply made up of a lot of races, a lot of cultures, and so many people who live together in harmony, unified under one identity. Now, it's not easy to live under this one identity because it's like it's a false identity. Because right now, a small amount of people have a huge amount of land, and this land doesn't belong to them. It's not rightfully theirs. And the people who say it's their land are constantly saying, give me my land, give me my land. And it's really hard to deal with this because individually, I cannot say that was my land because I will need proof, and it's a tough one. It's a really, but we have politicians and lawyers and all these people who will deal with it. So I'll leave it to them. It's not for me to be dealing with it. I'm just sharing basically with you what happened and how this country became what it is today. Now, I've spent a lot of years doing this. This is really important for me. So I would really appreciate it if you subscribe. Again, I would also like you to like the video if you like it. If you didn't like it, press the hate if you're a hater. No problem. Because if you hate it and you press the hate button, then I guess it'll inspire me to fix something, because I'm going to wonder what's wrong with it and I'll try to fix that. So I guess it'll improve me. So this is Understanding South Africa, and thank you for watching.